This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on the Planet MicroCap Podcast. And we have an awesome guest for you today. I'm really excited to have her here. It's Anna Najai-Kanti. Before we get to our interview today, I just want to remind everybody that we actually now have live our initial speakers, sponsors, and agenda on our website. Go to conference.SNN.Network. That's where you can go and register for our upcoming virtual event, August 3rd through the 6th. You're actually going to see Anna there on a really amazing panel that we've been planning and working on, and I'm just so excited for. You'll hear a little bit more about it later in this interview. First thing, I want to introduce you guys a little bit more, give you a little bit of Anna's background. She is a passionate believer in the empowerment of women and minorities in America. She is the founder of Dare to Dream Financial Planning. It's a fee-only virtual financial planning firm that serves the needs of 30 to 40-something women of color who want to live boldly and make a lasting impact on their family tree. She's also the host of the First Gen Realness podcast, which I highly recommend everybody go listen to in preparation for our interview today. I listened to a few episodes, and it's powerful. It's short and sweet each episode, but it's very powerful what she has to say there. And there she engages in conversations with her fellow first-generation Americans in order to reinforce their value and immense contributions to the fabric of America. And by fostering a sense of community, she hopes to remind her peers that they matter, their stories are important, and they are not alone in attempting to navigate multiple cultures with grace. With that, we have Anna Najai-Kanti here from Dare to Dream Planning. Anna, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bobby. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm so excited to have you on. This is like I said at the opening here, not only excited to have you on here, but also to join us for the panel at the event, which will be titled Ending Systemic Racism, How the Finance Industry Can Do Better. It's an all-star lineup. I'm so stoked to be there. So, yes.
Looking forward to it myself too.
Yes. So with that, I'd love to start with your background. You know, when and where did your passion for investing in finance begin?
Yeah, it was very accidental. I thought I would be like running an NGO and saving the world when I was like picking my majors in college. And I came across it by happenstance, but it married the financial planning profession really married so much of what I love doing and what I'm good at. Like, I'm good at math. I like problem solving. I like, putting puzzle pieces together. And I like people. Like, I'm very extroverted, so I like talking to people. So this kind of marries all of that together. It was a very happy, fortuitous coincidence that I fell into this profession.
Very cool. So, I mean, was there an experience in particular, as you were starting to develop, what you wanted to do with your career that was like, okay, financial planning, done?
Yeah. So I graduated college in the middle of the Great Recession, which was not the best time in the world to be entering the job market, especially when you had no real, clue as to what your trajectory was going to be. But because I'm bilingual, I got a job organizing conferences for people that wanted to invest in Latin America, and because I speak Spanish fluently. So I organized an event focused on wealth management in Latin America. And in talking to people in the industry, they were telling me about what they do every day and like kind of the general trends in the industry and what their day-to-day was like. And I was like, that sounds like it. Like, that sounds like something I could be really great at. And I think I landed my first job in the industry like a month or two later, at 2 months at most. Yeah.
So what were some of those when at your first job in financial services, what were some of those experiences like? I mean, what were some of the things that you learned there?
Yeah. I have to say my eyes were really opened to the immense amount of wealth that was around in the world. I don't come from money, right? Like, I'm very solidly middle class background. My parents are immigrants, right? And so seeing somebody with like a what is that, 8-figure or 9-figure portfolio, like, absolutely blew my mind. And so it made me, and also just from a knowledge standpoint, it also made me realize how much I did not know about finances and, how to manage your finances, how to manage your money, investing. Like, it was just my eyes were opened to a level that I didn't realize that how close they were. And this is with two really savvy parents. And I grew up in New York City, which is obviously like the finance hub of the world. My parents are accountants, so you would think I would have a clue, like they know about money, but I really had no idea. And so it was so eye-opening. It was really, really cool.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, what I find common amongst all my guests on here is that it's always not always, but sometimes it's a happy accident that we land into finance, or we have, maybe we're more math centric, or we enjoy learning about other businesses, and ultimately you find yourself into investing. I mean, it's fun. My parents weren't accountants, but my dad was on Wall Street for over 30 years. And it took me until college where then even for me, I was like, all right, I want to independently understand this more, as opposed to, it's pretty interesting like that, huh?
Totally. And I think, having been in this wealth management business is interesting because a lot of it is like a family legacy, right? Like dad or mom have a business and then they might pass it on. They might bring their kids on, or their son or daughter-in-law into the business. But that's not always the case. A lot of times the kids are like, I don't have a clue and I don't care. There might be one who wants to get involved, but they oftentimes take their own path there as well. And even if they do join dad or mom, they are doing their own thing or trying to shake things up and do it in their own way.
Well, you know what I think my main point is that it speaks to just financial illiteracy, not just in, in poorer neighborhoods, but also white neighborhoods, I mean, in our high schools and middle schools. I mean, the only thing I remember doing anything having to do remotely with stocks in the classroom was my dad coming in my 5th grade class saying, hey, we're going to do a fantasy stock picking class. It wasn't just microcaps for my microcap fans out there, but it was, just anything out there. And that was literally the only exposure I had in school. Did you have a similar experience?
I did. I want to say I was probably 4th or 5th grade too. I don't remember exactly when. I was probably about 9 or 10 years old. And I remember looking at the newspaper at like the classified back when we used to do that and look at like the stock prices. And I remember like we had a fantasy competition. I think I bought Coke. But like there was absolutely no tying like the fundamentals of investing to the fundamentals of building wealth. And there was not really much conversation about like how do you pick a stock. It was mostly like, okay, boys and girls, everybody pick a stock, and then at the end of this we'll see who wins. Like that was really like whose stock went up the most, and there was no tie to anything, talking about compounding interest or dividends or capital appreciation. Like there was none of that. It was just like, which ticker symbol do you like?
Yeah. Well, don't worry, we're going to change that. I already feel it. I feel me and you. We're going to change that. Hopefully soon.
If I have anything to do with it, we will.
Amen. So, I want to fill the gap then. So from starting your first jobs in wealth management to then founding Dare to Dream Financial Planning. So fill that gap for me. What then eventually led to founding your company?
Yeah, I moved around a bit. I worked at a few different firms in my career, and the traditional wealth management space is very focused on large portfolios, mostly like pre-retirees or retirees, or very wealthy families, like you're talking multi-generational wealth, right? And it just didn't resonate with me in a way that I wanted to be doing that every day of my life for the rest of my life, right? I wanted to work with people that were like me. So I made the leap to entrepreneurship late last year, 3rd quarter of 2019. And with the idea that I would serve communities of color as a source of financial education and really, contribute to easing a lot of the financial anxiety that we see as a society. And it's really, really problematic and it's rife. And I feel as though it really hinders our ability to live like really profoundly fulfilled lives. And so I wanted to have this be like my way of contributing to that and changing that. And frankly, like, it's just fun, like it's fun for me to take a married couple who's 35 and want to figure out like how they can do all of these different things, balancing childcare, paying off student loans, buying their first investment property, and doing all of those kind of things, and really seeing them get excited about like what the future holds for them, and their finances. So it's a lot of fun, and I haven't regretted the moment of it since I did it.
Absolutely. I mean, so when you were conceiving of Dare to Dream, I mean, did you also have in the back of your mind, just look, I hate to say this, but you're the first Black woman I've had on the podcast. I'm sure that
Yeah.
must be similar experiences when you were working at the wealth management firm.
Oh, totally. There was always a lack of melanin, as we would say. It was pretty pronounced. It varied to differing degrees, but the one thing that was consistent was certainly in terms of people that really achieve that next level. And I'm a very ambitious person. I push myself really hard, and I strive for excellence in everything I do. And so, it was hard for me to see people at that executive next level who were doing well, that I could emulate. And so I kept saying like to myself, like, if I'm not seeing people that look like me, or if I do see people that look like me, they're single and maybe don't have a family, and I'm married with children, and I am unabashed in like my ambition to have a beautiful, well-rounded life. Like, I don't want it to just be my career. I don't want it to just be my family either. And so I knew that I was going to have to find a way outside of this system, that was going to serve me and allow me to like spread my wings and do what I felt called to do, the way I wanted to do it.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it makes total sense. And just, I really can appreciate what you're doing right now, because at the end of the day, I haven't seen, and this is maybe my own ignorance. So, you're one of the first ones I've seen that actually has a firm, not just directed to, for people of color, but women of color, and then millennials,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's, you're hitting all three,
I am. I'm like super niche down, because the thing is, I know so many people, like, I can't, I get the question a lot, like, is there really enough of a market for this to be viable? But yes, there is. Like, there are, I know dozens and dozens and dozens, and this is just in my like immediate circle of women that are in their 30s and 40s who have great professional jobs, went to college, went to grad school, and they're doing well financially, and they just need some guidance on how to properly manage their finances. Because one, we're not taught as a society, like we already touched on that, we're not given financial education in school. And then two, the other thing is, when you don't come from money, it's that much harder to figure out like how you can manage your money. And when your parents don't have any money and nobody in your immediate family has any money, like, not to say that they're poor, but like they have not built a level of financial stability that you're trying to achieve. And so when you don't see that, you don't know how to get there. And so I wanted to serve as a resource for that. And so, like I said, I get this question a lot, like, are there really enough people for that? But there are. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I already know just anecdotally that it's a huge, huge untapped like portion of our society, because everybody's wanting to work with the people with $3 million liquid, and that's fine, that's great, let them do that, but that's not what I'm choosing.
Absolutely. All right. So let's get into the firm's philosophy even further. As you stated on the website, you're a passionate believer in the empowerment of women and minorities in America,
Yeah.
which, we've also talked about here thus far. Can you
Mhm.
describe your firm's philosophy and really, in a nutshell, the importance of the work that you're doing? I know you kind of
Yeah.
more or less just said that, but
Yeah.
let's dive deeper.
Sure. So I do comprehensive financial planning. I do portfolio management as well, but that's a bolt on. Really, I want to take people on like the quantitative traditional financial planning journey that they would get, going to any financial planner out there, but also a culturally sensitive and understanding, non-judgmental, educational piece as well, which I think is really key because, it can be intimidating when you are on the younger side and, you go into one of these big brokerage firms or you go into an RIA and nobody looks like you. And then you want to ask them like, I don't really understand what a traditional IRA is. That can be really intimidating. And I think it leads to worse outcomes overall. And, in terms of my impact, like, I really believe that money provides everybody with choices. And I think communities of color really are starved for choices. I think we live very disempowered lives oftentimes because we don't want to try too much. Or we have tried and had, our dreams dashed for whatever reason. And so I think that when you are financially empowered, that means that you have more choices, and that means you can live like a bigger, more prosperous life. And I also think it means people can't mess with you. To be honest, like, if I have money, you feel secure, you're willing to be a little bit more bold and stand up for yourself more. Whether that be with your boss, whether that be with a spouse, whether that be with, somebody you encounter out about your business, whatever that may be. I think it's really impactful.
Well, you actually went into this in I think it was in episode 6 about why money matters, and I think I think it was either redistribution or distribution to women of color, right? I think that was the exact. Okay, let's pick up on that. Let's go down that path with that episode, because I thought that was really powerful and important. So can you explain your thesis there and maybe even a little background?
Sure. So I was really, I recorded this like episode the day after I watched this, but I listened to this podcast by NPR, Planet Money, and they were talking about, this COVID-19 crisis and about how, essential workers like grocery store workers and pharmacy workers are really at the forefront of being at risk for contracting COVID. But it was highlighting these lower paid folks who tend to be women of color or people of color in general, and how they just don't have many choices. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, they can't quit their job that doesn't pay them very well to begin with, because they might not have much of a financial safety net to be able to afford to just be at home and not earn a paycheck. And because there are so many people unemployed in the country right now, that means that, like, even if they leave, like, they don't have much leverage. And it just reminded me so much of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I've touched on my background a bit, but, I come from a family of very strong women who, whether that be by choice or by circumstance, oftentimes were single moms, and they had to figure things out. And I saw so many women in my family have to make these kind of terrible choices. Now, you can change the variables, but the reality is that a lack of money meant that they did not have the ability to make the choice that they wanted to make for their life. And so I think by seeing that, I never really understood what the problem was, what was missing, right? I was like, why don't you just leave this terrible boyfriend? Like, I don't understand what this person is doing. Or like, why are you complain about this job every day? Like, just leave. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I saw the pressures that they were under. And really, I realized that it was just a financial choice and a fear-based choice, that I realized that money can be a really powerful behavior change and a circumstance change. And so, I want to also empower my clients in a way so that, they don't have to deal with whatever it is, whatever the variable is. They don't have to live in a house they don't want to live in. They don't have to be married to that guy anymore. And not to say that he's really terrible, but whatever it is, I want them to be able to actively choose the life they want and not just be deciding against something,
100%. Yeah, no, it was pretty interesting to see that, using COVID-19 also as kind of the background to bring this issue to light, really, because for whatever reason, and maybe again, it's probably my own ignorance, it's been affecting, communities of color much more than it has been
Yeah.
of white communities, which is, I
Yeah.
mean,
I think it's partially because of that, because your nurses and your nurses are and your home attendants are oftentimes women of color. Your grocery store workers are oftentimes people of color. All of these people, your bus drivers, all of these people that are out and about still, while we have the privilege of being in lockdown and being home and working from home and having that safety, they don't have that option. And so that means, I mean, I don't know from a health standpoint, but I'm just talking like sheer exposure. That's
sure.
huge.
Yeah. All right. So I want to take a step back because I want to, I really would, I wanted to share with our audience a little bit more about, the process at Dare to Dream Plan. We're going to come back to your podcast because I do have another question on one of the episodes,
Okay.
but let's play. We're going to play a little bit, let's say, I just signed up with your firm, and what are the main things that, you just took me on as a client, the main things you had me do first, and then, and some other things that you'd have me think about.
Yeah. So we're going to do like an intense data gathering, right? So I'm going to ask you for every financial statement, every like loan statement, your paycheck. Yeah, exactly. Like you name it, and I want it.
I'm just
and
kidding,
so
Mom.
that
I know where all that is. I'm just kidding. I promise. I do.
So I would ask you to provide all of that to me. And then we would have a call where, I would ask you a lot of questions, both about what your dreams and aspirations and goals are for your life. And then also just practical, like, why are you, contributing to a Roth versus a traditional, all of those kind of conversations. And then from there, we'd also do a lot of work on like your relationship with money and your money mindset, right? Like I would ask you questions like how do you feel about money? How, what are your anxiety points? What are your stress points? All of those kind of things. What makes you feel financially powerful? We'd have those kind of conversations as well, so that I can understand what your hangups are to help try and control for that in terms of creating the actual plan. And from there, then I'd actually devise the plan. We'd talk about it, talk through what that means on a practical standpoint. You have to contribute X amount now. We're going to pay off this debt first, and then we'll work on that other goal, whatever it may be. And then we continue to be in touch on an ongoing basis too.
I got to say, the timing of marketing yourself as a virtual financial planner couldn't have come at a better time. I mean,
right?
Geez, I mean, not that you want to get any kind of commercial place in New York anyway, because it's already ridiculous, but that worked out a lot.
Totally. I didn't really realize how poised I would be for this pandemic, but it's worked out well for me.
No, that's for sure. Look, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, one investing question, because this is a microcap podcast. I'm not expecting you to be into micro. You might be, which would be really awesome. But, if you had to call yourself a certain type of investor, what would it be? And just for even your own portfolio, what would be your own thesis that you look for with companies you're looking to invest
in? I like to keep things simple. Even though I enjoy investing and I enjoy talking about investing, I think that most people are not interested in it. And because they're not interested in it, or they're intimidated by it or whatever, they're just not going to end up taking very great care of it. And so, if I like to put my clients in a broadly diversified portfolio, lot of ETFs in there, some single stocks, but mostly ETFs, because I think, like I said, they're just not going to take the time to understand it, to monitor it, to reassess, to rebalance. Like they're just not going to do that. And so rather than set them up to just not do what they should be doing, I'd rather just set them up to whereas they are they're poised for success despite the lack of action.
Fair enough. No, that makes total sense. And especially when you're looking at passive investors as well, like I think we can all agree that if you're going to be a passive investor, you're better off looking at ETFs versus
Yeah.
individual stock picking, because that's where you
Yeah.
can really lose your shorts.
Totally. And totally. And I'm not opposed to individual stocks at all. I own individual stocks as well, like on a personal level. But I think that that does not need to be the bulk of your assets, especially if you are first starting with investing. And I think for communities of color, a lot of times, their families don't invest. Like for me, I only know of like, and I come from a decently middle class background. Like I said, I have one aunt that I know had an investment portfolio. Besides that, literally nobody in my family has ever had an investment portfolio. So if it's my first foray into that, I have no experience with this, like not even anybody to talk to about it, or even to like remind me like, oh, have you checked your portfolio lately? I think it's just a recipe for you're inviting problems. Unless it's just something you love and you geek out on it and you want to look at it all the time, like great. But it can be tricky.
We're going down an interesting path, because one of my questions I actually wanted to ask you is like, what are some of the most common questions that you get asked from your clients, whether it's
Yeah.
investing or wealth management, from any of the services that you do? What are some of those FAQs?
I think we oftentimes are very focused on like cash flow. Can I afford it? And also I'd say like, how do I get started in investing? So obviously somebody that's looking for my services is going to be like decently financially empowered, right? Or like determined to get there. So, I don't want to blanket and say that that's everybody, but I think that they are often very focused on like learning more about investing, and are really hungry to understand like how that is going to play into building long-term wealth. Because we all hear this, like, you have to invest, compound interest, yada, yada, yada. But they don't necessarily always have the practical understanding of like, okay, when we say investing, what am I doing? Like, am I buying individual ETFs, individual stocks? Like, I don't understand. What am I doing? And I want to know how to get there.
Absolutely. No, it makes total sense. Okay. So now I want to go back to your podcast. In episode 4, it's titled First Generation Wealth. I think it's titled First Generation Wealth Building.
Yeah.
But, I really wanted to know a little bit more about your thesis and what you would say are the concrete steps that first generation Americans can take to help start and sustain their wealth building goals.
Yeah. I think the underpinning for all of it, and this is something that people sleep on a lot in our industry. I think people like to make it about, picking the right stock or timing the market right, and like, picking that next Amazon. People like to focus on the hype and the gimmicky stuff, which I think the investing stuff is great, but I think that what they don't really realize that is really, really crucial is your mindset around money. And I think that is the first thing that's really important. You have to, one, understand that this is going to be like, it's really intimidating. It feels weird. You don't know anybody with any money. And then you say, I want to be a millionaire. Like, that's really hard. And so you're starting from scratch, right? I like to liken it to, and I think I said this in that episode, like, you're building a house from scratch. And you have to find a reputable electrician. You have to find a reputable plumber. You have to find a general contractor that you can trust. And you have to figure it out on your own. And so it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be intimidating. You're probably going to stumble and like, put a window in crooked, whatever. But you have to continue to continue on that path. And I think understanding also like your cultural money habits are really important. I think it's something that we don't focus on. We focus, like I said, we focus on like the shiny object over there and like the cool, fun aspect of it, but that's not necessarily what is really going to be fundamental. And then I think just educating yourself on the basics beyond that, which can be hard to find like really good, solid information in that's concrete and can help you take concrete action from it can be difficult. But I think that's really the key once you've done some of that other work, because then it's just numbers, right? And once you understand your relationship to money, then it's just numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying here, but at the end of the day, I have Investopedia up on a tab always,
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
Oh yeah. I mean, me too. That's the thing is like I mean, I think about this stuff all day long, and even still, like, I have to look things up sometimes, and you're not going to know everything, and you're not going to be perfect. But I think giving yourself that grace and that space to like follow that path and staying committed to it is really the key.
So I wanted to follow up on one phrase that you just said that I just want to understand better is what do you mean by cultural money habits?
I mean, this is like every culture has a different way of relating to money.
Okay.
And they have a different relationship with money, and their relationship with money or their the way that they view building wealth or having wealth is going to be different, right? So I'll give you like an example. Like my husband, my husband is also first generation American. His ethnic group, they are very big on like business and wealth, and like they are very big on that. But the funny thing about them is they will be incredibly wealthy. Like, actually like own millions of dollars worth of property or a business or whatever it is. And they will live in the most like Spartan, to put it nicely, of dwellings, right? Like this person can literally have 10 million US dollars in a bank account and they live in Africa, and they will, actively choose not to like buy lavish furnishings. And so when you come from a background like that, where they are placing value on building assets and taking care of your family, that might mean that you are going to feel a lot of guilt about spending anything on yourself. And so that is going to inform how you're going to use your money, right? So you're going to probably like be penny pinching and just like shoving every extra dollar into your bank account or sending every extra dollar to relatives that might need it. And if you don't understand that that's not how everybody relates to money, you're not going to realize that your habits might not be the most healthy.
Mm-hmm. So it's more or less having like going through with your clients what maybe is their cultural money habit,
Yeah.
and then saying, you can do that, it's perfectly okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying there's anything wrong, just saying there's other ways you can also think about
Absolutely.
spending your money, basically.
Absolutely. And that's going to be different with every culture. Like you see a lot of cultures where they're very big on, from my family background, they're very big on buying gold jewelry. And like gold is fine, but I can't have all of my net worth tied up in bracelets. Like that's not a great idea. And for lots of reasons, liquidity reasons, and if somebody steals it or, there are just lots of reasons that it's not a great idea. And understanding that can be really impactful in terms of like changing your financial behaviors.
And forgive me if I ask this in a ignorant way. I want to be very sensitive, but I mean, is this a uniquely person of color experience? Because I mean, as a white person, the idea of the cultural money I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you mean like, Jews versus the Irish over there,
Yeah.
like I'm just curious.
I don't know, but I would guess no,
Okay.
because I think that we all have a way of relating to money, and that might be like if you're from the South, you might view money a little bit differently. If you're from the Northeast, you might view money a little bit differently. Even anecdotally too, like my husband and I are from similar cultures, but I grew up in New York City, and so for me, like I lived literally in a one-bedroom apartment with my parents until I was 12 years old. So I am very comfortable like living smaller and like whatever. My husband, on the other hand, grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they have big, spacious houses. And like the idea of living in a small apartment with all of our kids and me, like would make him crazy. And so that's just a regional thing, right? And
Right.
that's just like a lifestyle thing. So I think you would even see that across the country too.
Got it. Oh, okay. So I was just so curious about that.
No, I get it.
I've never heard that before. So that was
Yeah.
really interesting. So,
Yeah.
so now I'm, as I said at the opening here, you're going to
Mhm.
be a panelist on a panel that we're going to have at our upcoming virtual event,
Yeah.
titled "Ending Systemic Racism: How the Finance Industry Can Do Better." You know,
Mhm.
for me personally, I didn't post anything really on social media because I didn't know what I could do or say
Mhm.
that would be more effective or really have any kind of extra meaning. And I felt, what's
Yeah.
the one way that I can potentially do something? And that's using my humble, not huge, but a humble little platform and following
Yeah.
to try and bring about some kind of change within
Yeah.
our industry. As I said earlier, you're the first Black woman I've had on my podcast, which I'm stoked about now, but I'm also really
Yeah.
quite sad that it's taken this long. And that's
Yeah.
something that I know I have to work on, and I've only
Yeah.
had two Black males on, as well, and so, I know, at least I'm just saying publicly right now, like, I know I'm going to be doing better to try and give more voice or give my
Yeah.
platform and expose more voices, because I
Mhm.
think sorry, I'm going on a pulpit here. I apologize. I'm cutting into what you have to say, but,
No.
but ultimately at the end of the day, like, I want people in my audience and just the wider community to associate finance not just with old white guys,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there's a lot of diverse voices out there,
Mhm.
but now to the I guess the very weighted question that I'd ask you, that we're going to be discussing at length on the panel, but really, from your perspective, what are some of the things that we as an industry can do better in terms of race
Yeah.
relations and just providing more opportunity?
Yeah. I think like we really have to do a lot with hiring. I think that the financial services industry does itself a great disservice by continuing to hire based on personal network and not holding itself accountable to not having a diversity of hires. Because, I think I read somewhere that like Black women are one of the largest groups of college graduates now, and that they also are like 42% of new businesses that are founded are um, owned by Black women. And so if you look at from the client side and from the hiring like HR side, we're just missing out on opportunities. Like there's a whole huge pool of talent that is not being tapped into, all because, we want to hire somebody that we went to high school's buddy's kid for a job. And it's just not, I think it's from a dollars and cents standpoint, it's stunting our own growth. I think also we have to recognize that like the financial services industry is known for money, for both for managing money and for making lots of money. And so I think we have to make a very concerted effort to continue to invest in underserved communities as well, and to share some of that bounty. I think frankly, like, at I am a very charitably oriented person. And granted, I'm just like a small fish in all of this big picture, right? But, all of this turmoil that we've been seeing and the protests that we've been seeing in our country has really prompted me to look at my business model and to commit to a portion of my profits going towards causes that are racial, social, economic justice oriented. And so I think if we all as an industry just picked a cause, and I'm not saying it has to be racial, social justice oriented, but I think that's a great place to start. But if we all did that, like even if it was just 0.5%, imagine the impact that we would have in this country if we did that. It's huge. And I think that we have so much capital and so much power and so much leverage, frankly, also over lawmakers and legislation that's passed and those kind of things. Like if we actually cared, this would have been fixed a long time ago.
Absolutely. One other point that I'm hijacking this from Tyrone when we talked offline for this panel.
Tyrone is the king of this.
I love Tyrone. He's amazing.
He's amazing. He really is.
And one of his main points that we talked about that we'll be covering in this panel also, and Tyrone, if you're listening, I'm sorry if I'm bogarting your point. You're going to do a much better job and eloquently saying it than I will. But really, he was talking about how, wealth managers or different, Goldman Sachs, these big firms, they go to the Yales and the Princetons to look for talent, but yet not going to historically Black colleges and universities to find talent. And they complain about the lack of diversity, and yet, well, it's right there. HBCUs, like there's a lot of Black people there.
These are great schools. Yeah, no kidding. Like they're great schools too. Like Howard, Morehouse, Spelman, like these are amazing schools, like that churn out like vast quantities of really wicked smart, super intelligent, super educated people. So why would you not want that? It just doesn't make any sense. And the cynic in me, the cynical New Yorker in me wants to be like, they're doing it on purpose, but I'm going to leave that's neither here nor there. The point is that it's a problem and it needs to be fixed. Like, and there are really concrete, easy solutions. Like that's one of them. Go to career day at Morehouse every year and commit to it. You're going to go to Harvard's career fair. You're going to go to Morehouse. There's no reason not to.
It's a pretty simple solution. Like why just set up, and it's kind of funny when you think holistically, there are so many incredible, from all races, just incredibly successful people that did not go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale,
Absolutely.
I've interviewed so many people on my podcast that were more than qualified to go to get their MBAs at Harvard or Yale or whatnot, but decided, hey, I want to stay closer to home. You know what? Hey, I want to save a little bit of money because the tuitions there are crazy. Like
go to the University of Utah or whatever.
Yeah. It's all the same. It's all the same program. I went to Pepperdine. They use the Harvard business curriculum. It's all the same.
Yeah. Totally. And I think also that diversity of thought is really important. And I think that we would see a lot more. I think it just contributes to the bottom line more in ways that people don't really realize, right? Because if you and I are sitting in a room, Bobby, I'm going to view things differently than you would, and I'm going to see things that you wouldn't, and vice versa. Like you're going to see things that I wouldn't necessarily either. And having that perspective when we're talking about looking at a new investment deal, like if we're investment bankers and we're looking at a new deal, I might see a company that might be more profitable or whatever. If we're portfolio managers and we're stock picking, I might be more aware of a different trend in consumer goods or whatever than you are, because I am a Black woman and you are a white man. And I use different things than you do, right? And so when you just have a bunch of the same people in a room, you're not going to get that perspective and you're losing out on profits. Like I said, from a dollars and cents standpoint. And we all know that financial services knows how to calculate some money. So if you guys are not addressing this, then you're leaving money on the table.
I could not agree more. And especially with the sentiment that if me and you were in the room, that you would definitely have a lot more good ideas than me, because in all seriousness, as I said offline, I'm not that smart. So let's just make sure that is very clear to everybody. So Anna, this is my favorite question that I ask all my guests on here. And by the way, not to put to put a bookend on our conversation that we just had. I invite everybody, go register for our event. This is going to be an awesome panel. I'm
it really
so
is.
excited.
I'm super honored to be on it. I'm excited about it too.
I really can't wait. So my favorite question. What investing or finance experience would you say has impacted your career the most?
So my brother-in-law told me to sign up for a Share Builder account when I was in college. And him walking me through like how to analyze a stock, and this is the first time I ever really thought about it like as an adult, sort of adult, that was really impactful for me. And I credit him so much for like make making me see the access that I could have access to investing. That was super impactful.
Very
So
cool.
shout out to Edward.
Very cool. Oh, I love it. So what advice then do you have for my audience that's looking to develop a sustainable roadmap for financial success and building
Yeah.
wealth?
So I would say there are really two things. I think you have to sit down and really like have a hard why and a reason that you're going to have to not necessarily, I don't want to say sacrifice because that sounds really boring, but like you're going to have to make trade-offs in your life on what you're going to end up doing, and having a impactful reason for doing that is going to be really important. So for me personally, that's retirement and saving for my kids' education. Like those are my non-negotiables. And if anything I'm doing is going to impact that for the worse, I'm not going to do it. And I think having that is going to be really important. And then I think also once you have that real reason, um, setting up your finances in such a way that you're not going to undermine that. So that's going to be like automating your savings. I like to do a bucket approach for finances. And I think that those are two things that make it really like foolproof. Um, so long as you are committed to your why.
Very cool. So with that, where can my audience go and find everything they need to know about you and
Yeah.
to Dare to Dream financial planning?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's www.daretodreamplanning.com. I also hang out a lot on Twitter. It's ANJIEKONTE. Same on Instagram too.
Well, with that, Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. This was I was very insightful, so much fun. And like I said, I'm very excited for our panel and for our next chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Bobby. This was great.
Thank you.